right now, I think there's just the three of us because we can't start until we have a quorum. But while we're waiting for those guys to join, we'll introduce who's here in person. I'm Christy Terry, and I'm gonna, when we have the whole council on, I'm gonna suggest that I am the lead for the questions. Normally we do a round robin, but with Zoom and different things. But once we do have a quorum, we'll make sure there's no objections to that. And then I'll go to my right.
I'm Sue McClure, council member.
And then I'll go to my left.
Councilmember John Osinga.
Yep, and then we'll just, like I said, we'll wait to make sure we have a quorum. So if you could just bear with us for a minute. Oh,
Okay,
here they come. Here we come.
Okay,
Oh my
so
goodness.
Bob Kwan is coming in the room and DeMoss is on the phone.
Great, thank you. So we now have a quorum. I'll go ahead and we'll give Tony a second to sit down. Councilmember DeMoss, did you just want to say your name and just say hello to Robert?
Hi, Robert. This is Liz DeMoss, and it is so nice to have you here. Thank you.
And
Thank
then,
you.
And then Vice Mayor Buckland, I'll let you do a quick hello.
Hello.
Vice Mayor Tony Buckland. So, since we have a quorum, I'm just going to say this out loud and look for any objections. You know, as I've said once, our standard is to kind of do these round robin, but in an effort of fairness with folks on the line and also in person, I'm just going to go ahead and read the questions to Robert. Everyone in front of us does have a paper that they can write down their thoughts and answers. So I'll just pause for a second and see if there's any objections to that plan. Nope? Okay, well then we're going to move forward. Again, Robert, it's so nice to see your face. I know it's East Coast time. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
I'm going to start off with the softball question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in this position at this point in your career.
Well, I have quite a great depth of experience in my background, both in the private sector and the public sector. And I also have some education that I went through several years ago. So I think I'm very, my experiences are very broad and I'm well-rounded, certainly. And when you look at the different functional areas of your city, I've actually worked in those types of environments. So I think there's a comfort level there for me to, if I were to come on board. To me, the position is a great challenge. It's a great opportunity. The setting couldn't be better in terms of the great outdoors. I like to hike. I'm a very outdoor type of person, and to me, the scenic beauty is just wonderful. And then you have the maritime component to the city, which is really something very attractive to me, given my past working in the maritime industry. So that's really something that really attracted me to this position.
Great, thank you so much. Describe your leadership and management style, and then there's a second part to this. So describe your leadership and management style, and then the second part is how do you respond to concerns that are brought to your attention?
My management style, it's an open door approach is how I like, anybody can come to me at any time with any thoughts, ideas, concerns. I am not a micromanager because I don't like people to, you kind of treat people the way that you want people to treat you. Now, on the other side of that, I am very careful about details. And so I will analyze work very, very carefully and look for, if there's any problems or mistakes or errors, or maybe we should go in a different path that's more efficient. I do get very involved in the operations, but I am not a micromanager. I'm not sitting over somebody's shoulder, watching what they're doing, because I don't think people want to be treated that way. They want to feel like they have ownership of over what they're doing. And also, I like to manage kind of by, I don't want to say by walking around, but getting out of the office, getting out to the field, seeing the operations firsthand, because there's only so much that you can evaluate on a computer or, just within the confines of your office. So that's something that I enjoy doing, actually, and I think it's very beneficial to being able to perform the job the way it should be performed. Concerns that are brought to me, I think the goal is to try to nip concern. It depends on what the concern is, really. If it's an operational concern, that's one thing. If it's a personnel concern, that's kind of another. But in any event, you want to try to de-escalate whatever it is and try to address that concern as quickly as possible. Take everything in confidence, and I'm here as I see my role as a city manager is to really help the employees succeed. They're not working for me; they're working for the city, and that's my goal is to try to make them as successful as possible. So if there's any concerns, that's what I'm here for. That's why hopefully you want a city manager that's going to address those concerns quickly and do them fairly, and also keep you apprised of activities and things that are going on within the city, the operations and employees.
Great, very good, sir, thank you. The next question is, what does government transparency mean to you, and what specific measures have you used in your current or past organizations to ensure transparency?
Well, I think you have to be transparent. We are the public, and it's not my money. It could be my money too, but it's taxpayer money and resources that's going into what we're trying to achieve. And if I'm on the outside, I want to be able to have access to all the information. And then also too, you want to be able to communicate that information. You don't want to just wait till people come and ask you for certain information. That should be something that is communicated to the public, to you especially, of course, but also to the public and to the various holders. So I think transparency is key. I don't think you have to wait for like down here, people try to avoid public records requests. I'm thinking, well, whatever you do can be a public records request. So, don't try to hide things. Be very, very open about what you're doing. And I think, you sleep well at night if you take that approach.
Yes, and then what specific measures have you used in your current or past organizations to ensure the transparency? Is that the example about the responding to the records requests?
Yes. You don't want to delay and hold back information and data in order to not be transparent. I'm never afraid to do that, and I think I've worked on both sides. I've worked on the operations, the executive side, you will, in the county, and then I've also worked on the elected officials side, and it's sometimes on the elected official side, where I am sometimes people don't want to be quite as transparent. So that was a little adjustment for me coming over to the elected official side. Obviously, if there's sunshine issues, you can't be transparent about certain things initially. But I think that to me, having even within the city itself, with the directors I like the approach of being all-inclusive, and so that everybody kind of knows what's going on in the city as a team. Granted, you'll have meetings individually with some of the functional areas and the directors, but I like to, I don't want to have 100 meetings because people have work to do, obviously, but I think it's important to kind of have that team approach and be transparent with your staff and say, hey, so that they kind of know what is going on in the city as a whole. As far as stakeholders, I would plan, if I were to be the city manager, I would plan to attend some of these committee meetings. And by all means, I think it's important to interact outside of just the office environment, and within the city. What I'm trying to achieve. It's important for me to get out in the community so that people can ask questions. I think, how you want to be transparent is another way is, on the website, you can put out notices about different things that are going on, for sure, from a communication standpoint. Like, for instance, we have, obviously, you're dealing with COVID and the coronavirus there. That's something that we do in the county here, and it's just constant information flow that's letting folks know, because quite a few people are very nervous. They don't know what the future brings. So, it depends on what area it is, but I think it's better to be almost over-communicative than to be under. If you're over-communicative, then you invite people coming to you all the time with suggestions, and sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming. But I really do think that that's the better way to go.
Great, thank you. Describe your approach to financial management and developing, overseeing a municipal budget.
Well, it's baby steps. It's a lot of details, and it's just building it up from the ground. It's a new. You've gone through this before, and I know you're coming into a budget season, and so it's important you cannot procrastinate. There is just no way to do that. You really have to get on it and start developing it and getting more and more into the details and asking a ton of questions and then asking more questions and then getting into more details. That's just the only way I know about going about doing it. And so I think that, you would have budget meetings, certainly, but I think it's important to inform you ahead of time so you don't come into a budget meeting and it's new in front of you and you're trying to grasp the information and the details and you're not very comfortable. Maybe you don't want to, take up a lot of time and start expressing your discomfort. So I think it's important to really make sure that you're on the page and this, before we even get to that step, so that you can ask a lot of questions. And since you're the ones that pass the budget and basically formulate it at the end, I would make sure that you felt very comfortable where we were, during the budget process. So, I'll be quite honest with you. In the state of Florida, there are 67 counties. We are the only county here in Florida that has a revenue cap, a property tax revenue cap. It cannot go up by more than CPI plus new construction from year to year, unless there is a supermajority vote and there's a finding of a critical need or an emergency. We're the only county, that has that. It's in our charter. And the people voted for it about 12, 15 years ago. So I am used to working in a fiscally constrained environment. And I know coming out of COVID, I would imagine that some of your revenues might be a little lower, in terms of, say, your sales tax, your bed tax, those types of things.
Yes, very good, thank you. So, can you please provide an example of 2 of the successes you or your staff had in securing grants or other creative means of financing municipal projects?
I'd have to think about that. Normally, the grants, I am not involved in creating the grants, but with the commissioner that I'm with, we have oversight over any of those grants that come before the board. So we could have grants. Well, just last week we had the airport had grant funds, the FAA, for some equipment that they were buying, and it was about 80% from the FAA and 20% from the airport, and that's pretty good. We've had grants recently for Housing and Human Services, actually money from HUD, and it's dealing with the COVID coronavirus crisis, regarding rent and mortgage payments. That's coming in. We've had some recent grants with our transit bus system that we have, Space Coast Area Transit. So, you know, all of these grants that come in, and they could be in any area really, they do come before the board. So I get a chance to pour over them, because obviously the commissioner would be really up to speed on what they're all about, and to the extent that he wants to get into the very, very fine details, you know, I'm prepared for that. I'm trying to think of some other municipal projects. I've been involved. We have a half-cent sales tax here that's called the Save Our Indian River Lagoon. It generates about $40 to $50 million a year. I was very involved about a year and a half ago with the allocation that they had with the funding to change quite a bit of it from muck dredging to septic to sewer projects. And that's something that really, you know, you're talking about projects. It's a long process, and it's going to take years to fully implement because there are so many septic systems out there. But that's something that I've been involved in. Right now, we're going through a rate structure evaluation for our wastewater system, and we're looking at rates going into the next 8 years or so. We recently had a rate structure increase that was evaluated, and that involved solid waste, garbage pickup. So there's been a lot of things that have come through that I have, you know, been having oversight with, but I don't, you know, I didn't initiate these projects, so to speak.
Great, thank you. And this next question, you've actually alluded to it previously as an item you're thinking about, but when you think about the fallout from the pandemic, what do you think are some of the biggest threats to Seward's financial picture, and what measures would you implement to mitigate those threats?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first you want to know what kind of revenue stream you have, and at this point it's kind of hard to tell because this pandemic continues. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, you know, we have a cruise industry here, and I know you have that as well. And just for example, our bed tax, it declined quite a bit. Not as much as we thought it would, because there are other opportunities, you know, people coming down and staying in the area. But the bed tax definitely took a hit. We've had The sales tax here is not as big a component as it seems like it is for you. Through, as I understand it, you have a kind of a sharing mechanism with the borough there, and so. But I would imagine that that would affect you quite a bit. How do you handle that? That's a great question. I don't know if you have some projects that you were anticipating doing soon. Sometimes it may have to be delayed, and that's an unfortunate thing because you want to make progress and you have, ideas. But if first comes to shove, you have to meet your daily needs unless you were going to let go of some employees, so to speak. But how can you generate other sources of revenue that quickly? I don't know, unless perhaps the state of Alaska is forgiving, or of course there's some questions there. We don't know under President Biden if there will be more funds that trickle down if they do come to the states. But that's a question. But you can't expect that to be the case, certainly. But it could happen. I'm trying to think of how that. It's a tough situation, but again, you have to sharpen the pencils, and it's a case of either you're cutting your spending, or you're going to have you want to find some other way to get a source of revenue. Now, I don't know if kind of a bridge loan could carry you over. I don't know. I'm not sure how you're structured as far as being able to take to borrow money for projects within the city. But every single avenue would have to be explored very, very carefully, because in terms of your traffic and your taxes, you cannot just generate that sitting in a room and just hoping. That's just the reality. And so you have to kind of figure out how to make the ends meet. And I know I was pretty vague about my answer, but at this point, that's really all I can can think of.
No, that's great. Thank you. I wonder if we're using that question just to get a little free advice from folks, but so tell us about your experience in overseeing or having a hand in managing utilities.
Well, I don't. It's funny because we have a meeting with the utilities, the wastewater. Well, they also do some water, but it's mostly wastewater. Director tomorrow to go through rates, and I've already asked him some questions today. I spent about a half an hour on the phone with him, so it's interesting that we're having this discussion. And then tomorrow, I will actually meet with him and with the commissioner, and we will go through that in some further detail. Because there will be a budget meeting next week on that, and a fire assessment, and some other budgetary items. So what I will do is I'll look through and kind of vet what, how they get to the numbers that they're getting to. And that's looking at the capital projects that they have in mind. It's looking at what kind of growth they're expecting. In terms of new homes and businesses. There's just a lot of things that go into that. I can tell you that in my time spent with in the utilities sector, gas and electric, when I was with Deloitte Consulting, I worked on some mergers and acquisitions across the United States, and I did some benchmarking studies on Xcel Energy was one of the big, large companies out of Minnesota, and for them, I performed a big benchmarking study on for Deloitte Consulting, and looking at all their the data that they and probably 50 other companies, utilities across the United States had provided to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And also looked at the shared services and those functions that, were coupled with the way the utilities ran. Obviously, you have to have IT and human resources and all these, and finance and the different other areas. So I did wrap my hands around that from a data standpoint, and that was something that was I thought got me acclimated or made me aware of some of the areas of concern in utilities. And then on a side note, this isn't dealing with electric, but when I was with Columbia Energy Group, we had a merger where we merged a propane company, became the 5th largest propane company in the United States. And to help with that merger, I was part of the strategic development team that went out and we did gap analysis. So we basically did flowchart analysis of every single functional area within that propane company, and did it on a 2B basis, and then or an as-is basis, and then to a 2B basis. Like, what's the best thing that you would like to have it look like at the end of the day, even if cost wasn't a concern. And then we bridged the gap, and so I think that's something that can be done with electric as well. There's a lot of nuts and bolts, but sometimes if you really get down to the processes, sometimes you can really come up with some ideas that might make it more efficient. And then, through that process, you can possibly reduce rates. So that's pretty much been my experience.
Yeah, good, thank you. The next question is what experience do you have in community and economic development?
For economic development, I'll give you two examples. One is not a good example. I mean, it's a good example, but it wasn't a good situation. I was with a clerk of court, which is here it's a constitutional office separate from the county. And part of the role of the clerk is to be like an auditor, basically, of the county. In fact, they make all the payments for the county. So they kind of serve that audit function. But we were looking at a community redevelopment agency from one of the cities. And there are rules, and I don't know what the rules are where you are, but there are rules for community redevelopment agencies within Florida, and you can only use funds that are provided in the plan that they create. So it has to be very specific. And they were using this, it was tax increment financing. They were using these extra dollars, and they were using it for general fund purposes. And that was a big no-no. But I did learn through that a lot about, how our community redevelopment agency is run. Now, recently, and this is on a more positive note, where I live, or where my office is in a place called Merritt Island, and there is a Merritt Island redevelopment agency, and I guess they get about $1.25 million a year, and I've been very involved with the executive director and the planning manager for that agency in helping them to determine how to use the funds that they have. Some of it has been for beautification purposes. Some of it has been for things like facade grants, but a lot of it has been for infrastructure. And that's been a really good thing, because with infrastructure, sometimes you can partner with other agencies. For instance, in their case, one of the projects they had involved a huge park, had a stormwater feature to it. They were going from septic to sewer. They were doing some road and bridge or road work, it was a big project, and they ended up with 2 state agencies provided some grant funding. I think the Department of Environmental Protection, I can't recall the other one, and then also the county itself, and then the Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency. So they were able to get these different funding inputs to be able to achieve this large infrastructure project. So that's a good example of what can be done in terms of economic development. Now, I don't know, pure economic development, that may take some different thoughts. Whether you have tax abatement policies, you defer sales tax, or there's a certain amount that maybe they don't have to pay if they establish themselves. There's also sometimes you can get grants, or you can look at your zoning. If somebody wants to come in and develop or start a business, you can try to see if you can accommodate them that way. There's different things that you can look at. You could become try to make it easy for businesses to start up and to come in, kind of be a one-stop shop that says, this is what you would need to do if you wanted to get a business off the ground. Don't try to make it difficult, because I think that sometimes government, and you would know this because you're in it, is government kind of, becomes too bureaucratic.
Right.
And businesses don't want to, their thought process is different. So to the extent that you can make it easier for them, as long as they, don't go outside the regulations, but as long as you can make it more efficient and easier for them, I think that's beneficial.
Great, excellent. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of rattling these off because we want to make sure that we get through all of them in an hour. So sorry, if you need to take a break or get a drink or something, just let me know.
Okay.
And we're on number 9, and we have, just to give you kind of an outlook, we have 16 questions. So we're trucking right along. So in your view, and by example from your work, what are some of the key efforts local governments can make to help retain local business? And I think you were getting there with your last answer also.
Yeah, I think that's the key, really, is to, you'll have competition. That's just the nature of it. Another thought that I had that I didn't mention is, for us, it seems like you're less restrictive in terms of how you use your bed tax funds. For us, it's more restrictive because there's a state statute that's pretty close. There's only certain areas. It has to have something to do with tourism in some fashion. So, but what we have here is we'll use those funds for capital projects, and sometimes you can do that to help a business stay that might leave. And I'll give you an example. We have a baseball stadium, and we may have an arrangement with this one group that deals with amateur sports, and they bring in a lot of teams. And then, of course, the teams stay at the hotels, and it's good for the economy. And one of the arrangements we have deals with a kind of a cost-sharing agreement regarding upkeep for the capital facilities. So that's an example, and those funds would come from the bed tax, from the tourism tax. So that's kind of one example, I think, of how sometimes you can keep a business in that might want to leave. This is a policy decision for you, so I'll just give you my opinion because I don't want to step on your toes, but I'm not a big fan of just giving huge grants to companies to keep them, but that's just my own personal thing. So however you want to go, I'm obviously on board, but that's just something I've seen where governments have gotten burned on that here down in Florida. But those are some of the things like I see that you have that industrial center. I was looking around, and it seems like there might, I really don't know much about it, but there might be some opportunities there to, from in terms of having, I don't know whether it be more vessel repair or what it might be over there, but if you have land, they're not making a lot more of it, so the opportunities might be there.
Great, thank you so much. Community involvement is important to Seward. Please explain how you plan to be accessible to the public.
As I've kind of mentioned previously, I plan to attend other meetings. I see that you have some boards. So I'd make it a point, and part of it is just to educate myself as well, since I would be new. But I'm very open to meeting. I think that's one of the benefits of the job is just meeting a lot of people and getting their input. And again, like I said, my door would be open, and if people want to set up meetings with me, that's great. I think it's in a small community. You can't. That's part of it. You have to do that. I don't see how I couldn't do that really. And it's in my nature too. Like I said, I'd like to get out and be out among the public. So to me, that's just part of it. If somebody wanted to set up something where I'm available, say every few weeks for kind of a formal thing, that's fine too. But again, it's to me that's very much in my comfort level, just to meet with people.
Great, excellent, thank you. What experience do you have in utilizing data and technology to evaluate local government services for their efficiency and effectiveness?
Wow, that's a tough question. Yeah. I think all I can really do is I don't have any specific examples in mind right now, but I will say this. Sometimes, and I've seen this where managers are over enamored with off-the-shelf technology. So these are just tools, in my view. The data analysis is the most important thing, and so I think, if you try to build a legacy system that's overcomplicated, of course, that's not good because you need people to be able to service it, and then, then you have institutional knowledge, and it doesn't get passed along, and it just becomes too complex. So I think the more efficient and, or I should say the less complex it is, the better, and the more, that it can be, if it can be interchangeable and you can use it for different functions, that's a good thing as well. But, I've done a lot of data analysis through multiple jobs, whether it's when I was a consultant or whether, in the energy industry when I was in bank operations. So, to me, sometimes less is more, and the more, I don't want to say simplistic, but the more straightforward and you get to what you're actually trying to figure out is really, really tougher than just building some big system that really doesn't help you in the end. So I know it's pretty vague, but that's been kind of my experience.
Yeah, no, very helpful. And also, if I'm not clear with my enunciating, just let me know if you can't hear me through this mask. So sorry if that's a problem. So, ask me to repeat whatever you need. So what initiatives have you advanced to ensure that the values inherent in diversity, equality, and inclusion are part of the organizational culture where you work?
Well, I was in human resources for 2 years, and that's a very important thing, diversity, inclusion. You'd want the government entity to be able to reflect, kind of society, if you will, and you want to make sure that there's opportunities. There's sometimes training opportunities are key, so that you can bring in folks and maybe they're not experienced, but they can come in and get in the door and work their way, to where they move up. So I think that's key. Recently, the last few years when I'm, on the board side, when we appoint members, we probably have maybe 40 committees or boards, maybe even more than that. We'll look out into the community and make sure that we get a good cross mix of folks. You don't want it to become political if you can help it. If you want to make sure that you're very inclusive, and so that means going into every cross section of people that you have in the boundaries of your of the county or city or what have you. So I think that's very important, because really it comes down to the community. I think that's what you're trying to achieve, and if the city doesn't, if people don't feel that inclusive approach, then you kind of set up boundaries between you and the people or the stakeholders. It doesn't necessarily just have to be the residents, so could be business owners and whatnot. And I think that's the last thing you want to do. So that's basically my approach.
Great, thank you. How would you establish an environment of trust with the City of Seward's labor unions while still advocating for management?
Well, that's a great question. They know that I will be advocating. I'm there on your behalf. So if you give me policy direction, I will do my best to accommodate you. I think they'll know that, and I don't know how. It really depends on what they're trying to achieve. For instance, where we're at, the fire union, financial, salaries are more important than other things. With the other union, I think the LIU, it's not salary. Their raises and salary raises will be the same as the other employees within the county. It's other, it could be sick days. It could be a different conditions within the agreement that are important to them, and so it's not so much the salary. So, but to build the trust, they really have to just understand that I'm there on behalf of the city, and I will do what I can to help them out. But if it comes down to certain areas that there isn't, that there's less room for negotiating space than there are in others, then that's just, I'll be happy to explain that to them. If we don't have the funding, then in a certain area, then, you know, I just have to explain that, okay, well, this is the funding that you have. Now, how you want to make some changes given that funding, you know, I kind of leave more to you and your membership, but this is kind of where the line is. And I think you just have to be straightforward. There's really no other way around it, in my view.
Yeah, great, thank you. What do you need from your supervisors or from council to be effective in your position?
From the supervisors, just a communication. Just tell me what's going on. Don't leave me in the dark. I don't, you know, nobody wants surprises.
Yeah.
So just keep me abreast of what's happening in your area and what you think will be, you know, kind of what projecting forward, how things will look. With the council, it's I don't expect just respect.
Yeah.
That's all really. I've seen a few of your meetings, and you seem all pretty respectful. So I didn't. There were no issues in my view from you know, when I saw the meetings and you were talking amongst yourselves and with others. So I appreciate that. But you know, I'll be happy. I know that different council members have different areas that are important to them, and so, you know, I'm open to discussing those individually, and then of course as a board, I mean as a council, you know, if that's something that you want to bring up as a topic. But you know, so everybody kind of has their own style, and I recognize that, and you know, it all kind of makes us human. So I'm comfortable with that, especially since the fact that I work on the elective side right now, so I kind of know how, you know, it's a different thought process than working on the operations side.
Great, thank you. Tell us about a time you handled a situation in which an employee did not perform up to your expectations.
Oh, wow.
It's always tough.
Yeah, that is. Now, I don't know that I can think of anything specific, but to me, you know, employees, I think preparation is key, I think. And to me, if an employee has, you know, they should be prepared for whatever they're doing, unless there's a reason that they can't achieve what they're trying to do. But to me, you don't want to, again, you don't want to get back to that procrastination. There's times, it's downtime, everybody has that. There's coffee breaks and different things. You know, you want good quality of life, certainly, even while you're working. But at the same time, you know, you really want to make sure that you're prepared and you have, you're not getting behind on things. So I think that my experiences when I've had difficulties with employees, it's because they weren't staying on top of the work. And, you know, sometimes you have to, well, you just have to get with them and say, listen, you know, we're here, in the case of the city, we say, you know, we're all professionals here. And we need to, you know, we reflect what's going on in the city because we are in the public realm here. And there's an expectation that we're, you know, supposed to get done what we need to get done. And that should be the first focus before we just have fun and games and, you know, relax. So I think that's that's been my experience with employees. Is it's never been too much in the way of behavioral problems. It's just, like get down to the nuts and bolts, and let's focus on what we need to achieve, and then we can pull back a little bit. And then what's good about that is when you do have a little downtime, then you can kind of reflect on what you've done and think, well, maybe we could do things a different way here to make it even better next time. So that's the beauty of that. That's how I kind of operate, and I like to have employees kind of look at it the same way.
Excellent, thank you. So the very last question is the typical, do you have any questions for us?
I have a few questions, but they're not really important. They were just things that I came across. I saw you had a jail, and you might lose the jail. Is that true?
I think that was our acting city managers here. That was an issue with the funding in the state, and I know our administration's been working at that. I'm sure Norm's happy to answer that question at the current status.
Sure. So right now we're working with the attorneys and trying to get the state. The state actually wants us to start prosecuting our own people that we arrest and then house them, get a judge, a DA, a defense attorney, all that. They want us to pay for all that. And so, but all we're doing is we're taking care of their laws that they passed. So it's just going back and forth. It's a budget thing, of course. So the other communities that are helping us, we're all kind of going together with them. So that's kind of where we're at right there. So.
Yeah, it was good you picked up on that.
Yeah, that's really it. Just some interesting things I come across just out of human interest, but I really didn't have any other additional questions at this time.
Well, I want to show you my face for a minute, and I just want to say, and I'll try to look at you instead of looking at you at the screen, but I just want to say, we just appreciate your time so much tonight. We appreciate you applying for the job. Just great attention, and we're very happy to have the opportunity to meet you. Moving forward, we'll have 2 more interviews tonight, and then I think at our next council meeting we'll be making some decisions. But again, we just really appreciate your time tonight, and just a great package that you put together to apply, and a great interview this evening.
Well, thank you, truly, and thank you for your service.
Great. So with that, we have a few minutes before the next one, and we'll sign off and just say thank you again, Robert, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Great, appreciate it. Take care.
mics are on, so I'll just check and see, do we have folks on the phone again? Liz is on.
Liz, and then the candidate and Rachel from GovHR.
Hello, Rachel, we've already said hi to you. Hi, thank you, Janet, for being on the phone with us today. I'm just going to let you know that normally we do round robin, but since we do have a council member on the phone, I'm just going to lead the questions. But to kick us off, we're going to take an opportunity and just introduce ourselves, just so you know who's on the phone and who's in person. So, Councilmember DeMoss, I'll start with you if you want to say hello.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. We're really looking forward to meeting you and having this opportunity to get to know you a little better. And thank you so much for applying.
And then, John, did you want to go?
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
John Osinga, council member.
And I'm Sue
Raise your hand.
Sue McClure, council member.
And then,
I'm Vice Mayor Tony Backlund, but I want to say thank you so much for applying and giving us a portion of your time today. Thank you.
and then Christy Terry, Mayor, and so I'll be grilling you with questions tonight, so be ready. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll just let you know that we have about 16 questions. If you can't understand me through the mask, feel free to ask me to enunciate or pull down my mask and say it a little bit better. If you need anything repeated, feel free to do that. I mean, I think in this Zoom world, there's always, maybe a little bit of a delay or something. So just feel free to, speak up if there's anything that needs to be repeated again. But yeah, just welcome, and I'll just kick it right off if you don't mind. The first one's a nice softball. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are interested in this position at this point in your career.
Well, as you know, my name's Jeanette Bauer, and I hope you can hear me. I have my mic down here, so, okay, just want to check on that first. And I am married with 8 children, grown adults, thankfully, and 19 grandchildren with the 20th on the way. The majority of our children and grandchildren live in Alaska. As you can tell from my resume, I was in Alaska for a long time and then moved to Minnesota. Part of the reason for doing so is my husband was retiring, an Alaska State Trooper, and retiring, and he grew up here in Minnesota. And I served as a clerk for a long time and wanted to make the transition into city management and had an opportunity to do so here. And my goal was to, of course, grow and gain knowledge and learn. And I feel I've done so, and that I have the qualifications to be the Seward City Manager. I love Alaska local government. I, in fact, was looking what the Alaska Constitution says. I love that. The purpose of this article is to provide for maximum local self-governance with a minimum local government units, and to prevent duplication of tax levying jurisdictions, and a liberal construction shall be given to the powers of local government units. I love that. To me, Alaska local government is right there with the people, and I've always loved that. That is not how it is here. And I do love Alaska law. I know that Seward's a home rule charter. Palmer was too, and very close charters. Very, very similar charters.
Excellent, thank you. Well, of a mom of 6, you have me beat by a couple, but I still have kids at home. Describe your leadership and management style, and then the second part is, how do you respond to concerns that are brought to your attention?
Leadership, management, and concern. Okay, I would say that I am by nature a laid-back person. I laid back and I like to have fun. And I also recognize with that I do have to set some boundaries where with expectations. But overall, I really like to have fun, and be a leader that can have fun, but also set boundaries and expectations, more so, the expectations of an organization. I would say that my leadership philosophy involves making and keeping my commitments. I really believe in that. I believe in a high degree of integrity and place value on being truthful and trustworthy. I am optimistic by nature and believe in others and sincerely desire for them to succeed. I like to cultivate and grow people and to support in any way that I can support. So that's really my leadership style and my management style. I have 8 department directors that report to me, and they're all wonderful. I have one that I always say needs a little more hand-holding, and even if he was in the room with me now, I say this to his face, so this is not surprising. So needs more hand-holding. I often think of him as being the one that comes in my office and melts down, and it's like, okay, Eric, come on, we can do this, and let's remember why you're doing what you're doing and the wonderful things that you are doing. And when COVID first started, unfortunately, his facility was completely closed and a major loss of revenue. And it devastated him. And so I was in the drugstore and I saw this plaque and it said, "Everything's going to be okay." So I got that for Eric, and Eric told me he still looks at it all the time. I was having a particularly bad day, and he was in my office. He said, "Do I need to bring the plaque back to you?" I was like, no. So I guess that was kind of overview of my leadership and management style. And I'm sorry, the second part has to do with complaints. Is that correct?
How do you respond to concerns that are brought to your attention?
I truly believe in communication. If it's a citizen concern, I definitely say that I have not been able to speak with them, and for whatever reason, I call them back and get information. And then if it involves a particular department, speak to the department director to find out what is going on. As always, there's 2 sides to every story, what is going on. But more so with communication to wherever the concern comes from, with communication, speaking directly to that person to get the information about what is going on.
Great, excellent, thank you. So this next one also is a 2-part question. And the first part is, what does government transparency mean to you? And then as it pertains to that, what specific measures have you used in your current or past organizations to ensure transparency?
So to me, government transparency, and I think as far as Alaska law, it's very good, but is truly, obviously all the meetings are open, but more so even, I think there used to be a time that documents were not applied to public as they should be. I think it's helpful now with websites. That's huge. That's really revolutionized, I think, putting documents out there. Seward has a lot of documents. I love it on the website, so that was very helpful and very, very nice. And I think that speaks well of the community as well, the end of the city. And but to me, that's being open with documents, open about projects, open about funding, all of it, providing all the information that can legally be supplied to the public and discussed in meetings. As far as specific measures, I implemented the City of Palmer website, with the end goal of all documentation being on the website. When I came to Monaga, it did not have a very good website, and so changing that, also putting all of the documents in Minnesota, it is not common for council packets to be on the website.
Wow.
Immediately, all packets went on the website, both communities that I've been in Minnesota. So those type of things, supplying more documents. I manage the website in Palmer. Actually, I do in all places now that I think about it. And so whenever there was a repeated request or even one request really, for any document, any type of process, procedure. It went on the website after that. If there's going to be a request, we're going to put it out. So that's been my goal.
Great, excellent, thank you. So, describe your approach to financial management and overseeing a municipal budget.
Developing, okay, trying to write it down.
Yeah.
So I have, since I started in local government, been part of the budget process. So I'll start with the budget process and then go from there. But part of the budget process in developing the budget, working with finance directors to do that and department directors to do so, and basically starting at the basic level, going through all of the revenue, expenses, justification for the expenses as well. As you know, there's always requests that expenses exceed revenue. So making sure that it is a truly needed expense before it actually arrives in the budget. And then, so doing that at the very basic level. And then as far as oversight of the budget, my monthly reports I have a finance officer, that's the title here, and meeting with him all the time about the finances, our investments, our grants, where we are in the grants. I do all the grant reporting, so then I give it to him to process the final part of that. And then also managing it with the department directors. We always talk about, even though a capital request has been approved in the budget, especially with COVID, and it's called local government aid here. We received local government aid, but because of COVID, it's been certified and we should receive it, but with COVID, we're just not sure. So we've actually suspended any large capital purchases until after we receive the local government aid, just to be certain that we have the funds to do so. So that's part of the financial management that is going on now. And of course, with COVID, it changed the little things. Actually, I think more intense and detailed right now, which is not a bad thing, but just because of the unknown of financial right now, the financial situation right now.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. Can you provide an example of 2 of the successes you and/or your staff had in securing grants or other creative means of financing municipal projects?
Well, let's see, I'm trying to think of 2. In the city of Wadena, we have a business park, and we were able to secure, and I'm working with our, his title is Wadena Development Authority Director, because we have a development authority, and he's actually a department head. It's complicated, but he's kind of a separate agency, but yet one of my department heads that I supervise. So, but working with him, we secured a grant through deed for the business park, and then we developed the business park. The grant, I think, $800,000 grant, and then we had to do a match, of course. So that's one big success, because at the time, it's called the BDPI program. They were running out of funding, and so it was pretty competitive. And so we were able to secure that, and that project is actually completed, and it turned out really well. One, I'm trying to think of another specific one, because there's smaller ones, smaller grants that we've received. There's one that's small, and it might seem insignificant, and I guess I'll bring this one up because in the grand scheme of it, it was really, because we have much, much bigger ones, but really helpful for our communities. We have 3 major highways through our community. One of them is called Highway 10, and Highway 10 is a 4-lane highway except for on either side of the city of Wadena. It's called MnDOT, Minnesota Department of Transportation, had a project that involved the city, but I'll leave that part out for now, but involved the city, and construction project that closed Highway 10, the major route through our town, for 3 months.
Wow.
so knowing that that would really affect our downtown businesses, I worked with our community partners. We had a group, just a group of volunteers that we worked together to figure out how, one, could we get the word out to everyone, because the project had been talked about for years, and so the community didn't believe it was going to happen. But, to get the word out, but two, to come up with a strategy for signage. That was our plan. So the strategy for signage, to get signage, one, to be able to be in the MnDOT right away, because they're not very friendly about that. But then two, to just be directional signage. That's not the normal construction here sign, but to point to where the businesses are and get people downtown. That was a small grant, but it has had a big impact on the community. So I feel like that was a really successful one. Not in writing a grant. Honestly, the grant was not hard to write. It was only a few pages. But just bringing everyone together and then seeing the success of it afterwards.
Yeah, excellent. What do you think about the fallout from the pandemic? What do you think are some of the biggest threats to Seward's financial picture? And what measures would you implement to mitigate those threats?
From what I've read and heard through the news that the cruise ships have been canceled for 2021, that is huge. I'm also reading, I think it's 320,000 cruise ships annually in Seward.
230 cruise ship passengers is probably what you're...
Okay.
Yep.
Maybe I probably misread that. So to me, that actually is a big concern because of the all of the revenue lost there from tourism and the taxes. So to me, that's probably a big issue for Seward, probably the biggest one from what I can tell so far. Honestly, I was reading about it and thinking about it and reading the budget and the biannual budget and realizing that actually that process is probably going to start soon for the next budget, and thinking about the pandemic and what to do to help and to probably cut costs. Costs are going to have to be cut, and to still deliver services, because obviously that is important. So my thought is I would meet immediately with the finance director and all of the department heads and, of course, the council, and talk about where could, I don't want to, sometimes cuts sound negative, and I don't want it to sound that negative. I want it to be a collaborative effort to reduce expenditures to make it through this time. And I'm also hoping that maybe there'll be some reversal on the cruise ships, but I don't know. It's hard to tell. Things down here are actually much more strict than it appears in Alaska, which, I don't know, that's had a big impact down here. But so I'm not quite sure if cruise ships, there will be any change in their mind, but definitely to work together, work collaboratively to see if there's anything that could be postponed. There's always a negative effect on postponing things too far, but to do some cost-saving measures to make it through this time. I believe that there will be some CARES funding. At least that's what we're hearing down here. There'll be additional CARES funding for local municipalities. So hopefully that will help as well to augment the losses. But even if there is for the city of Seward, there will be losses for the community as well. So trying to, help them any way that can be helped. But I think going back to, I would immediately look at cost-saving measures.
Great, thank you so much. Tell us about your experience in overseeing or having a hand in managing utilities.
Every community I've been in has had water, sewer, and here in Wadena we have electric as well. So we have our own, we call electric co-op, but our own electricity. And so I've always, since I started been involved in water, sewer, and then direct oversight with now as working as an administrator, it's a different title here, but administrator in my community. And like I said, with Wadena we have electric. It's actually been pretty fun learning about electric. I mean, I don't think I don't know all the ins and outs of kilowatts and all that stuff, but working with it and then working with our, his title is utility superintendent. We're doing electric service territory expansion at this time and working through the statute to do so. And there are buyout provisions with the co-op that we will be buying out. So working through all of that, negotiating that, we're actually in that process right now. So, but yes, and I've been involved in receiving grants reporting regarding any of the utilities. Along with that, Highway 10 project was a huge infrastructure project of our water sewer within the Highway 10 corridor. So worked with Burlington Northern is on one side of our easement, and then the other side is Highway 10. So working with all these entities to make sure that our infrastructure went in during the Highway 10 project as well.
Excellent, thank you. So what experience do you have in community and economic development?
Trying to make something specific. So we do, as I stated, we have a WDA director, and I work with that director for all of our community development activities. I'm also on a board. It's called the Economic Alliance. I'm the president of the board, and it is a nonprofit part of Wadena County for economic development, and we work with the communities that do not have an economic development department, and there's quite a few in our county that don't, so we support that as well and work with them. As far as in the city of Wadena, I do work with the development director, and we have been working on incentives for our lots. The city council, we had a whole subdivision went tax forfeit with special assessments. They'd been tax forfeited for quite a long time, and I think it was in 2018 or 19. I'm not quite sure what year. We purchased, the city purchased all of the tax forfeited lots. Here we have to purchase them from the county. So we purchased them from the county and have sold 10 of those lots to developers, and we're actively marketing the rest of the lots to have houses built on those lots. Already we have made money on it just by the sale of the lots. More so that the houses will be built on it to increase the tax base, which is what we really want to do. So I've been working with that for a long time. It's kind of interesting. I'm trying to think of specific examples because it's always working on community development, always working in any way to help the community, help the businesses, and like I said, even through that little project of the signage, that had a huge, community development impact. Working also along with that, with any planning and zoning issues that come along with it. We have a brewery that came into town, and they're here, and it's wonderful. But there were some planning and zoning issues that we had to work with right off the bat. We'd never had a brewery before, and also microdistillery came in afterwards, so had to work through that. And some of our code we discovered was outdated, so to work through that, and then working with the it's called aged here, but alcohol control board, and making sure that everything was followed.
Great, thank you. So in your view, and by example from your work, what are some of the key efforts local governments can make to help retain local businesses?
I really believe that oftentimes, I know here in Wadena, cities get the rap, so to speak, that they're hard to work with. And I think that changing that narrative is huge, and also proving it. When I got there was that notion that the city is hard to work with, and I wanted to change the narrative. So I met with, there's a gentleman, I always call him, you know how you have your kind of, your community people that are kind of the experts in this or that, and you can use them as a resource because they know what's going on. So this one person, and he's the expert in really in kind of taxes, tax abatement and it's called TIPS, but tax increment financing here. And he also is a developer and owns and buys houses quite often in our city, but also he had chosen to be in another city. And so, well, why are you there? Why aren't you here? And he said, because you guys are hard to work with. I said, well, let me prove to you that we are not hard to work with, and tell me why we're hard. What is it that specifically, because I don't want just the rumor stuff, but specifically, tell me why we're hard. And so actually he had some good stuff, and we changed some stuff, and even it was just procedural process stuff that kind of held things up, and it was unnecessary. So we changed that. Our forms were difficult, so those have been changed. So I think probably really talking to the community and the businesses about, one, what do they need, and communicating. You know, there's some things that statutorily and code-wise that we can't change, but explaining why and what can we do to help. And I think that's, again, going back to communication and meeting with business owners and talking to them to listen to what they need.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, you know, you're hitting all these topics, so this one might be a little bit of a rehash, but community involvement is very important in Seward. So please explain how you plan to be accessible to the public.
I think that in Wadena, the first thing I did was I joined Rotary, but I went to the Lions Club meetings and whatever civic organization I could be at to meet people, to get to know them, and then developing that relationship so that as issues come up, they know who I am, they know that they can approach me, and you know, they all have my cell phone, they call me, and so really just being in the community and talking to people, and also letting them know that I really do want to hear from them. I do want to know the issues. I want to be able to work through whatever needs to be worked through. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. So, next question is, what experience do you have in utilizing data and technology to evaluate local government services for their efficiency and effectiveness?
So some of it, you know, is through utilities, of course, data and technology. And we had some issues with our wastewater treatment plant, and that was in my other community. Issues in the water plant and wastewater treatment plant with really, and this is, I don't know if anyway, use of our chemicals and that sort of thing, and also our readings were off. A lot of things were just going wrong. They were just going wrong. So some of it, you know, truly was that the data, the SCADA system was giving us the wrong information. There was something wrong with the SCADA system. We finally figured out it wasn't that our plant was off. Our water was fine. Our discharge were fine. But it was truly the technology involved with the SCADA system. So once we got that corrected, then everything fell into place. So, you know, we had to analyze it through that. And, of course, with water, sewer, and even electric, through all of the monitoring, that's, you know, obviously a way that it's been done. We just did a housing study with the Economic Alliance that I spoke with before. So where the director did, I will admit, most of the work, but analyzing what is needed in the community. She did a lot of the door-to-door stuff, so then she just gave me the information of that and analyzing it through what we need in the community. And, we found out that we are heavy on rental, but we need new houses. So just some of that. I'm trying to think more technology-wise, so. And of course through financial software,
Yeah.
always analyzing that.
Great, thank you. So, what initiatives have you advanced to ensure that the values inherent in diversity, equity, and inclusion are part of the organizational culture where you work?
So I'm in Minnesota, and as you know, there was a great big issue in Minnesota. And where I am, I'm in what's called Greater Minnesota. So Greater Minnesota is north of the cities. We're about 3 hours north of the cities where the George Floyd protest and incident happened. And I will admit, we're not exactly a diverse community up here, but it really, we spoke to the Department of Justice, of course, my chief of police, and to talk about that although we're not diverse, we still have to be inclusive and be aware of who comes into our community and respectful. And we haven't had any issues, I'll be honest, but so we've had the conversation about being inclusive, and that's pretty much what we've been doing. Out in Bethel, of course, I was in Bethel, and that's a very diverse community, and I think that it was hard at times to be inclusive, but at that time that I was there, I think the whole climate has changed, but I worked really hard to speak to everyone and to not ever make anyone feel they weren't valued and important. People are people, and everyone is valued and important. So back to your, initiative, Advance. Right now, we're truly in talking about things that are going on in Minnesota, how they may affect us in the future, and then what we need to do to make sure that we are inclusive. And so that's where we are. We're still in kind of at the beginning stages.
Very good, thank you. How would you establish an environment of trust with the City of Seward's labor unions while still advocating for management?
We have 2 unions here in Wadena, and just finished up both negotiations with the police and then the utilities. And previously, there had been a very adversarial relationship, not with the police department, but with the union representatives. I made it my goal that we wouldn't have that type of relationship. We didn't need to have that type of relationship. There was no reason for it. So I asked her to send me the request in advance so just I could review what was going to, come to be requested through the union contract. And then I asked her for a meeting where we could talk about it. And I told her my goal is just to learn. I want to know why you are making these requests. That's all. That's all I want. And I will admit I went into the meeting with one of them. I'm like, no, we're not going to do that. That's just a no-go. And then after they explained why they wanted, it was like, oh, I can totally support that. So I think probably it worked well. I did that with both unions. And, tell me why. Explain to me why, because there's part of it that truly, but it went very, very well. And in fact, her name is Ginger. She thanked me at the end. She said, we've never had a meeting like this, and I really appreciate that you listened to us. There was give and take back and forth, but it was never adversarial, and I'm really pleased with that. And we have signed contracts. The union voted on both of them, and the utilities union I finished up last week, and the police has been probably 6 weeks. But
Great, yeah.
And I was honest too, because there was utilities, they had a request, and I'm like, that will never fly, and I'm not even taking that one to the council. And and I explained why. We could never afford what they asked for. We could never afford that. And I, really went into details why we can't afford that. I understood their point of view, but there's no way the city could afford it. So, I was very open and honest with them about why I could not even take that one to the council.
Great and helpful. What do you need from your supervisors, us as council, to be effective in your position?
As you can tell, I like communication a lot, and I have told always when councils that obviously have an open door policy, and that they're out in the community more than I am, because I'm there at the office and stuff, and that they see and hear things, and I want to hear about it. I want to know, what are you seeing, what are you hearing? Come talk to me. I want to know that. So for me, I believe I need communication. I'd like to know what's going on, and so that way, it can be more effective that way. I don't think I need, hand holding or anything like that, but I do like to communicate. I like to, have two-way street on communication. So communication.
Great, thank you. So, tell us about a time you handled a situation in which an employee did not perform up to your expectations.
Well, I can say right now I have one of my department directors on a performance improvement plan, and we are meeting. In fact, we have another meeting next week. It's a little rough. I'm not quite sure how the outcome of this one's going to be, because there's room for improvement. So we're working through the room for improvement. So performance improvement plan with this employee, because there's value in what the employee does, and I say that because there are times where employees do have to separate from employment within municipalities. We had a police officer, and that employee needed to separate. So we did go through the process to have these employees separate. But as far as not living up to expectations, I have an office employee that I've met with and had some discipline, and we're moving to a performance improvement plan with her as well. I really believe that this employee will improve, and I don't think there's need for termination. So I like to communicate with that, and then also move on to whatever we need to move on to ensure that, one, they're either successful, or I can, in good conscience, say that this isn't the place for them.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to pull down my mask so you can see my face, because we are on to the last question. That's the typical question of every interview. Do you have any questions for us?
Well, I'm glad that you brought up about the cruise ships, because like I said, in reading, I read the budget and then the comprehensive plan and that sort of thing, and really the cruise ships, the theme, tourism, I shouldn't say just cruise ships, but the tourism obviously is the theme. I know Seward, and it's obviously the theme there, and it's beautiful, and tourism is huge for all of Alaska, but definitely Seward. So I'm glad you brought that up, and honestly, it really have been thinking about it, and if I were selected, definitely want to meet with everyone to discuss it, because I do think there's going to be an impact. So I'm glad that the council, obviously you're aware of your community, but that being proactive in the thought of the pandemic and what's going on with the pandemic.
Yeah.
I have seen where some, put their, oh shoot, I'm sorry.
No, you're okay.
It never rings, so I don't know why it's ringing.
You're fine. At least you're not a cat. So a phone's fine. At least you're not a cat filter. So go ahead. Sorry.
And now the voicemail will probably pick up. So anyway, now I'm a little thrown off. So if I were selected, I was going to say I look forward into working together to try to solve that. I actually have a question. What would be the first items if you would see the new city manager that they would tackle?
Well, I guess I'll start with an answer. You know, I am just one of 7, and there's probably lots of things out there, but I think what we're working on with administration right now is our mid-session budget cycle. So I think that's something that's probably first on our list. The other thing that we've just put into code is, you know, it's kind of strange timing, but, you know, a 6-year capital improvement plan. Like, you know, I mean, you've correctly identified there might be some projects that have to be delayed, but, you know, just some more forward thinking on some of the projects that have been delayed. And then I'll just turn it over. I mean, is that just a good basic?
That sounds good.
You know, just those would be the top things that I think we'd start with. And then, you know, our current acting city manager, he's a long-term employee, Norm. He has, you know, the full confidence of council. So I think you would just, you know, kind of lean on him to get up to speed on other things, and he'll be a good support for you for sure.
I thank you. I, you know, been reading obviously on the website and minutes, and I could tell through minutes, through the meetings, he knows what he's doing. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, so that's awesome. I was reading in the budget, and as far as the jail, it sounds like there'll be a decision. There's 2 dates, July 21 and July 22. So I wasn't quite sure, but so I'm thinking there will be a decision regarding the jail coming up shortly.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to turn it over to Norm to kind of brief you on that. I'll let you repeat what you said before.
So hi, there's a couple things with the jails. So one is, you know, budgets, of course, with the state, and they currently want to put that we have to process our own court cases. We have to hire a judge, a DA, yeah, all that stuff, and we can't afford it. And so the other municipalities around the Kenai Peninsula are the same boat. So we're kind of all working together with our attorneys to go with the state, and what we're doing is that we're processing their statutes. You know, it's this Alaska statutes that we're enforcing for them, but they want us to process it. So that's one of the things, and you know, they keep cutting the jail budget the state gives us every year. They keep cutting it year after year, and it's just getting lower and lower. So it's getting hard to operate the jail.
So, you know, obviously we're in a economic situation where the state's trying to shift costs. So that's something, you know, that we're going to have to continue working on.
That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, that was interesting reading that, and I was like, that makes sense. What that you said, the unfunded mandate.
Yeah, you got it.
Municipalities. Do you guys think that the Alaska Marine Highway will ever come back? I think that would be so awesome.
Seward.
I don't know if it'll ever come back to Seward. The community, I think, fought that fight a number of years ago, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see. That's another state item that you know, the Alaska Municipal League has been working on.
Right. And then I guess my only other is about time frame.
Yeah, good. You know, and just generally, the clerk's here, but you know, my impression is we're going to have the 3 interviews tonight. There's a couple council members that will watch these interviews, and then I imagine something will be at Monday's a holiday, and then a week from Monday we'll have our next council meeting, and something will be discussed at that meeting, and then we'll move forward from there.
Okay.
Good.
That's great.
Well, you know, I'm putting my mask down because I just want to make sure that you see my face so that you can hear how appreciative we are of your excellent application. We just so enjoyed our interview with you tonight. We appreciate the time that you've taken so far and your interest in Seward. And yeah, we just want to thank you for your time and just really appreciate you applying for the position.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time as well. Thank you very much.
Well, good. It was so nice meeting you. We'll let you go, and we'll all just wave and give a thank you. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Yes, we are back on.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. you
City
told me.
manager interview, Scott McClure.
And Rachel.
Hi
There's
Rachel,
Rachel.
how are things going?
Good. How are you guys?
Good, good.
Still here.
We don't see,
I don't know why I'm on there twice.
yeah, I don't know, but we don't see Scott McClure on.
He might be honoring, I think we are pretty clear with the candidates, we don't want them to overlap, so
It
he
is
might be-
exactly 7 now.
Yeah,
on
he
that
might
phone.
be trying to honor that. Oh, hi Scott.
Family resemblance?
So,
Yeah.
hi Scott, you know, normally our council does a round robin with the questions, but since we're in the era of Zoom and we have 2 council members on the line, I'm gonna lead the questions. But the first thing we're gonna do is go around and just give everyone an opportunity to say hi so you can hear their voice. So I'll start with folks on the phone. Councilmember Cease, did you wanna say hello?
Oh, Scott, nice to see you. I don't want you to not seeing me, but I'm glad you're going to be on tonight.
Councilmember DeMoss?
Yeah, hi Scott. Thanks for being here. We're excited to get to know you.
Thank you.
Great.
Welcome, Scott. I'm John Osinga, council member.
But you can't quite see him. Oh, there he is. And then I'm going to introduce the lady to my left because I think she's a long-lost relative. This is Sue McClure, and she's a council member.
Yes, Mr. McClure.
All right,
I'm
very good.
Sue McClure. There's a name recognition here.
And then, go ahead.
And I'm Vice Mayor Tony Backlund. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us.
And then I'm Christy Terry, and I'll be the one grilling you this evening. Welcome. And we're going to start off with a softball question for you to introduce yourself. And the question is, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are interested in this position at this point in your career.
Okay, yep, very good. Yeah, so Scott McClure, I live in Monmouth, Oregon, and career-wise, I've been city management my entire career. I got a degree in political science from Portland State University, and then got a Master of Public Administration also from Portland State, and did an internship in a suburb of Portland, then got my first position at the city of Gresham. I did a variety of positions there. I worked in the budget office, public works, city manager's office, really good experiences there, learned a lot. Went on to the city of Brush in Colorado, a town on the Eastern Plains, and a nice ag-based community. Started out as the assistant, where I did the building program, planning, managed a small airport, risk management, just a variety of positions there. The one I always laugh at was Colorado's a local control state, so I was the building official with no training, no certifications, and frankly dangerous with tools. But I was a building official for a couple of years there, so got that figured out. Moved into the administrator slot there, did that for a number of years. It was a real good experience, stayed with the town, then kind of tug of family got us back to Oregon, so I went to the South Coast, which is at Coos Bay, and we're in that community for a couple of years, had some good experiences there, got some interesting projects, big development project trying to recruit a Home Depot. We knocked down a derelict building on our waterfront, and actually there's a museum on that site now. And probably the fun one was there was an Egyptian-style theater in Coos Bay, actually one of the most intact kind of motifs in the country. They were going to close the theater, so the city actually bought it with urban renewal money, got it renovated, and then reopened it for community use. And that was a neat project. At that point, then went on to the city of Monmouth, where I spent that's kind of highlight period of my career, almost 13 years in the city manager slot. Most folks see that was the most period of success that Monmouth's ever seen. We did utility systems top to bottom, park improvements, renovated our downtown, multiple public buildings, actually did a police building project based on bond funds and during a recession, which was a pretty good deal to get that passed. Had a really good experience there. Was just looking to kind of step up again. Ended up at the city of Canby, which is a kind of a little bit distant exurb of Portland, so it's not really attached to it, but it's kind of in that sphere. Did that only for 4 months. So that was an odd deal, but I got a few things done while I was there that I was proud of. And at this point, I'm looking for a great new opportunity. I've been desiring to get out of state, get out of Oregon, do something different, experience some different things. I think you guys win as far as the most unique place I could go. Most places are different somewhere or another, but Seward's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I've always kind of been a Northwest person. It's had kind of Alaska on my radar, and just the amazing, obviously, natural beauty, all the recreation, all the lifestyle living up there. And then I think what's amazing for a town the size of Seward, the services you pack in is pretty impressive. I mean, that's something that most people wouldn't think. If you asked them, well, how big is the staff or how big is the budget? People wouldn't get it right. So very intrigued with the full slate of services. Covered most of those services, including electric. A lot of experience in that area. Haven't managed a harbor before, so that would be a fun new one to add on. But for me, just kind of a summary is I'm looking for a great place to work in a great community, and if I can find that, I hope I can land it.
Great, awesome, good start. I should have said that if I'm not clear or if you need something else repeated, just go ahead and ask me. We're doing this whole mask thing here, so I should have let you know that, but you're off to a great start. So the next question has 2 parts. Describe your leadership and management style. And then the second part is how do you respond to concerns that are brought to your attention?
Okay. Yeah, so first part, I've developed over the years just a great management leadership style. Interesting one there, I always reflect that when I was like 5 years in the field, I was a good manager. I was a pretty good manager, but doing it for 20, I'm excellent now. I've really grown, developed, learned, adapted, adjusted, kind of got flexible, just kind of figured things out. Instincts are developed at a different level. So it's really good having that extra experience and continuing there. So basic leadership management style, inclusive. I want everybody involved in decisions. Everybody knows what's going on. In a broad sense, my organizations have always been integrated very well from the council down through line staff. You don't have people off doing different things. People know what their roles are, where they need to be, how to get things done. Most times my department heads will say that I'm the best supervisor they've ever had. Light touch manager, if I have folks that are doing their jobs, obviously, there's standards. But I like to give basic direction. I'm clear. No one ever has any confusion about where I'm coming from. I support as much as supervise. I really look at us as friends. I have very friendly relations with my department heads. We know each other. We get things done. And we just problem solve. I think a couple hallmarks in that area just to kind of show the relationship. Well, one is just productivity, how much we get done, basic services and big projects. But if my department heads screw up something, they just come and talk to me because we'll just go, okay, well, what'd you do? Okay, well, let's see what we can do about that, and then try to problem solve, work it, see where we can go. Another level is with really if you build a really good team environment, one-on-one or as a group, it's very rare when you have to impose a decision. It just really doesn't happen. So we just talk things through. We just keep working. We have good relationships. And so it's a light touch. I like people to be motivated, to kind of want to unleash their passion, their creativity. And you can't do that if you're just, making people follow rules and sitting on them too hard. So I like that touch as far as working with folks, open, whether all kind of input from wherever it is. Different level there was with line staff. The line staff really like working for me. They know they've got a supportive leader that's there to help them. Even in Monmouth, I still live in Monmouth, and as I'm out for walks, the public works folks will be out doing their jobs, and they'll still stop me and Scott, hey man, how's it going? And, miss you. Likewise there, our team was set up for union relations in Oregon, and so I was always on the negotiating team, and regardless of how much we might be banging heads in the process, everybody walked away as friends.
Great. And then how do you respond to concerns that are brought to your attention?
Yeah. Internally, just if somebody's got something, we'll just, okay, let's talk about it. So if something comes up, that could be an employee coming to me or a department head, needs something a little bit different from me. One that I do, it's always an ongoing process, but once a year when I do the employee's evaluation, I ask them, do you need something different from me? Is there something I can help with? And then a couple times, I had a couple employees, not too many, that they actually just kind of wanted more recognition, a little bit more of a pat on the back, some praise here and there, and it was like, okay, that's fine. I think maybe a fault is I'm kind of that baby boomer, show up and do your job kind of a person to a degree. But I was like, okay, that's a reasonable thing. So I just made some adjustments and kind of went there. Obviously, different levels. If it's working with council, then obviously yes, tell me whatever you need. If you need adjustments, different information, whatever you need to go with there. So for me, it's really critical. I want to do a good job. I love this profession. I want to do a good job. I would just assume if I was doing something that wasn't pleasing everybody, tell me. Let me take a crack at it. Like I said, I spent my entire career making adjustments, adapting, shifting. So just let me know, and I'll make those adjustments.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then this is another two-parter. What does government transparency mean to you? And then what specific measures have you used in your current or past organizations to ensure that transparency?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so transparency, I think for me, it's actually a lot of levels. It's employees, even internally, just knowing what the goals and objectives are, where things are. Council, obviously the key thing is for you to be informed. And so that's kind of routine issues, just things that are going on, but then obviously, council meeting items, critical issues that are coming forward. I had an interesting situation in one city where they previously had a mayor that really drug meetings out. And so when he stepped down, another mayor came in and said, I'm going to tighten this up. He tightened meetings up to the point that new councilors didn't feel they even had the discussion done before they were asked to vote.
Yeah.
So I had to work with the mayor to go, okay, let's get the little three bears thing going, get it just right, and just make some adjustments there. So I think that's with council, you're always going to have full information from me. You'll get all the information, all the recommendations. You'll see where we're coming from, but other options too. So if you want to pursue something, you're there. Broader one with the community is really making information readily available. Things that a city can do on a specific level. Having a robust website, good information you can get there, and that's budget documents, audits, bigger things like that, agenda packets online, and then just the smaller ones, the how-to, how to sign up for a recreation program, what's the utility billing process, what are my options, and just kind of keeping things out there. Other levels, I've been in communities that have done really good newsletters for the community to let them know just what's going on. I've used Facebook very effectively. We've used that. And then for me, there's just kind of an ongoing level of getting information out. Then on specific projects, you customize each time you have a project. So in the case of, I'll say a low-grade one, we needed to repaint our city hall. And just like you do at your house, we just put color swatches on the side of the building, numbered them 1, 2, 3, 4, and let the community vote. And we let the community pick what the color was going to be. A different level, like we were doing the bond campaign for the police station, that was different. That was a completely higher level effort involving, public opinion surveying, consecutive meetings, open houses, different tools there. And then another level in there too is with citizens is getting them the information they need. If they're interested in something, if they're concerned about something, then get them the information. I think it's actually, I had a fascinating experience. Western Oregon University is in Monmouth, and we took on interns on a regular basis. And one year we had an intern from China. It was a Chinese student. We're like, well, that's going to have some challenges with the internship side. So we said, let's just get her exposed to, local government. And I sat down and did an intro with her, and I started to talk, and then I stopped myself, and I said, okay, we need a frame of reference for you. So what do you know about your local government in China that I can explain how it works here? And her answer was great. She said, we're not allowed to know anything about our government.
Wow.
Simple as that. So I said, okay, here's the first contrast. And I explained, any citizen can come in and ask for information, get information on purchases, policies, whatever it is. And she was like, oh, wow. But I think it's critical so folks do have that information, to make decisions too. And I've helped people kind of a different level that have an issue with the city, it turns out they need to actually address it to the council. I coach people on how to do that, even if they're opposed to what I'm recommending, because I think it's my responsibility as the person that lives and breathes the stuff, 40, 50 hours a week, and help them. It's hard for a regular person just to figure out where to get information, how to format their presentation, let alone being nervous when they're doing the presentation. So I've walked people through, and a couple of times they thought I was kind of strange. They're like, why are you helping me oppose your policy? I'm like, well, because you're a citizen. I'm here to serve.
That's great. Thank you so much. So describe your approach to financial management and developing and overseeing a municipal budget.
Yeah. So at kind of core level for me, it's based on policies. So out of the gate, one of my core values is very simple. It's use money wisely. It's really as simple as that. It's good quality services, use money wisely, make the community better, if I could summarize just on 3 points. Financial management's based on policies. So I usually have your core policies that go over budget, audit, purchasing, leasing vehicles, replacement schedules, how you do your capital planning. So you've got a framework there. Then from the budget process, it's going through that rigorous process of doing a good job with the budget. For good or bad, Oregon's fairly prescriptive on the process that goes into, but it's a good process. It's very thorough, very transparent, a lot of narratives to show people what's going on. One that kind of drives me nuts is if you just have a budget with a bunch of numbers, that doesn't tell anybody anything. So we like to illuminate with that to show what the department does, what are key issues going on, changes in the budget, getting that a little bit easier to bite into. But all the numbers are there, if somebody wants to look at them. Doing that follows up with just operating practices. So making sure best practices are used for the internal, the accounts payable, payroll, purchasing, just that ongoing utility billing, making sure those things work right. And then it closes out kind of at the finish with the audit, and then making sure things are in order. You've done a good job to do that, getting the good audit information to the council. It's been interesting in recent years with the new audit standards that have come up. I think audits are actually getting worse to even present. With the information, I think they've made them, they're supposed to have made them better, but I think they've made them more confusing to present to folks. Personal opinion, but that's in a different way than working with the auditor to say, okay, you don't need to dive into every little detail, show us where we are. We had one really good auditor, it was pretty funny, the council liked it. He went through the main funds and he had a happy face, a neutral face, and a simple as that. Let's just say your general fund was draining reserves, you got a frowny face.
Yeah.
If for some reason you had weakness in revenue in a fund, that got a frowny face. Reserves going up, spending coming in below budget, those are happy faces, and that was great. And then for somebody who wants to read the summaries, and if you want to go through the 150-page document, then have at it. But a lot of times, like I said, some of that stuff's kind of hard to get to, and I think that's a big part of what staff should do is be distilling complex things down into really bites that people can absorb.
Yeah, great. I love that. Can you provide an example of 2 of the successes you or your staff have had in securing grants or other creative means of financing municipal projects?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So I think one direct one on a grant, we had a park in town that was part drainage facility. Then we had some park facilities, but it was real low level. Most of it was actually just kind of grass. There really wasn't much to it. And so we did an improvement plan for the park, and we turned it into, we had a perimeter trail put around it, a restroom, and that I thought was really fun. We actually built a natural area. So we went with what looked like basic turf grass, kind of rough turf grass, and we actually put in natural grasses that would grow up like 3 feet in the air, move around and put a trail in there. One element of that project I thought was fun is we did a prefab bathroom. So if you left for work in the morning, there was no bathroom. You came home at 5 o'clock and there was a bathroom.
Wow.
Different way to do things. That was fun. So that was actually grant funded through the State of Oregon Parks Department. And I think critical to grants were our person that was lined up for that, and I helped is building the support before you do the grant. Sometimes people think, "I'll just apply for a grant." It's like, well, you don't have the justification, you don't have community support, you just score worse. And so we just dug into other folks' applications, learned from others, and kind of got that one over the hump and did a good job with it. Public facilities, as far as financing goes, we take a critical look. So in Monmouth, I adopted an organization that had been really lax at capital planning and moving forward, so there's a lot of needs. And so we ended up doing master plans for where we had holes, which is actually multiple, built financial models for all of those, multi-year plans, put that into rates, into rate studies where we're doing capital improvement plans. Then when we got to the projects themselves, we just took a real creative look at how can we finance this. And so in a couple funds actually had decent reserves, so we actually used cash to fund those. In one place, we needed to generate money for the project themselves to do cash. One was building revenue to take care of debt service, and went out. And on one project specifically, renovating our wastewater plant, typically you would have gone to a state agency. We had our initial meeting with them, and when they showed me the 140-point checklist, when you get done and you get your money, I was kind of horrified by that. It just seemed a little excessive. So we looked at other options. I started calling banks, and I actually ended up going through a bank that wasn't much more complicated than getting a house mortgage. Wow. Better interest rate, and we got the money immediately with no strings tied. And so that was a real good project. Another example in there, doing some of our downtown improvements and park improvements to help our downtown. We just looked at how can you fund them each time. I typically gave council a matrix. We said, you've got these 4 projects coming, here's the pots of money that you can use, and it's a choice. If you use money from this pot, it's obviously not available for something else, but a good example of that, 2 of our major park improvements that we did it half with urban renewal money and then half with park development charge money. And that was just the way we went. In the case of the one point where we used urban renewal money, the urban renewal fund didn't actually have enough, so we went to our electric fund, which was very flush at that time, and we had a loan from the electric fund to the park development into the urban renewal so they could actually cover their share. And we set the interest rate so it was actually lower than you would have got at a bank, but then the electric fund was getting more than it would have got on typical investments. So it really worked for everybody. But key thing there is it's always just looking what's out there, what ways can you get there, mapping things out. I was in a prior community that set a benchmark for major improvements that was 50% cash, 50% bond financing. And their theory, let alone just the efficiency of it, was the cash takes care of the people that are already in town, and then if you charge things out in the future onto rates, then you're catching all the new people that are coming to town. And so they thought from, even just not financially, but from an equity standpoint, that was a fair way to operate.
Yeah, very good. When you think about the fallout from the pandemic, what do you think are some of the biggest threats to Seward's financial picture, and what measures would you implement to mitigate those threats?
Yeah, I think that you've obviously got your disruption, and in the case of Seward, tourism. I mean, tour is the most direct one, let alone individuals coming to Seward. If the cruise lines get shut down, if that gets taken out again, that's huge. That's a tough one. Other communities, I think we're having different discussions. It's getting people, when they're comfortable getting back out, and then, getting more events, getting people, hey man, we're open for business again. Letting people really know that you're there. That could be something to look at, and that would be an intriguing one, is if you do have those different pathways of kind of tourists coming to Seward, as if the cruise lines are going to be shut down, then how do you get people up there more individually? How do you just get families on their own that are driving up, getting those people into there? Or even internally in Alaska, trying to recruit hard to get folks from Anchorage or wherever that may be. But I think the biggest exposure would be the cruise lines. And obviously hurts your businesses and hurts the taxes for the city.
Yeah, excellent. Tell us your experience in overseeing or having a hand in managing utilities.
Yep, so utilities are very extensive. I've had multiple utilities in each of the cities that I've managed. Sewer has been consistent all through them. Stormwater, water I've had sometimes not. And then obviously the big one in Monmouth was had the electric utility. So that was a new one. Little different twist on a utility, but great experience. Next door to Monmouth is a town of Independence. We're basically sister cities. And a number of years back, started in 2007, built our own telecommunications system. So it actually does cable TV, phone, and then internet. Internet's the driver. Cable's a nightmare. Won't go through that. But that was an interesting process because let alone the normal utility function, it was very educational for most everybody involved because that's a competitive environment. There is no monopoly. So that was a very different way of thinking, and they can adapt to some new things to how I approach the other utilities. But in each of the communities, I've done a good job, I said, with that base level of master plans, financial planning, getting into the budget, working through where we can go. So a lot of experience in that area. That's a forte of mine. It's an area that I like. I kind of laughed at myself. My dad was a highway engineer, so maybe some of that came through me on osmosis or something.
That's awesome.
Then just a different level, if I can add, interesting. Monmouth was fairly unique because you have the electric utility involved. We were functionally about 75% of the city's budget was utilities or public works. Kind of throwing streets into the mix. And every now and then, if I kind of wanted to get his goat, I'd be at a public function, and as long as the police chief was in earshot, I'd be talking and telling somebody, I said, yeah, we're pretty much a utility provider and I have a couple cops. And he would glare at me, and then I'd get payback at some point.
No, you never got a ticket or locked up in the jail, huh? What experience do you have in community and economic development?
Quite a bit. Directly, when I was in Brush, as I mentioned, I was the planner in that position, that first position. I was there. And the intriguing one with that, with being the planner and the building official, I was able to see a project from start all the way to the finish. So I would take a brand new subdivision, move that through the process, get it platted, get it opened up for lots, and then I was doing the building permits, including doing the certificate of occupancy at the tail end of the process. So that was neat, seeing that whole chain of events in there. As far as land use, kind of that community development side of things, Oregon has a very intense land use system, so I've been living and breathing that for years. You sort of learn a lot, very disciplined, orderly process that makes sure that everything integrates. Very comprehensive, so you're backing in your growth plans, where you want the growth to go, what type of housing, do you have the utility systems to back it up, the transportation systems to back it up. Very comprehensive process. That's what I'm more or less used to doing. Broader sense, economic development, I've done all levels there too. I've worked at the local level, supporting Chamber of Commerce, being on the Chamber of Commerce Board, Business Association, doing Main Street programs. Actually, we did a formal Main Street program for renovation. Did a great job renovating the Monmouth downtown. Commercial projects, I mentioned previously, involved with the Home Depot, that kind of level of project. Most recently, had a kind of a coming soon on a lot in Monmouth. It was like 25 years old, one of those classics, and finally got the folks ready to go. They had some hurdles that they ran into on the process, some surprises. We helped them through utility issues, rerouted some of our lines, did some work to help, and then they got surprised by wetland issues, which unfortunately popped up in our community all of a sudden. We had people getting more strict with the wetland issues, and so we helped them through a couple of those things. Their project was being impacted negatively. We actually ended up putting an incentive package in place just to get them over the hump a little bit to get them going. It's actually a nice one. It was pretty moderate, so it was good to get their level of investment for a modest investment on our side. Industrial projects. In Colorado, we had a local power plant, so in the city limits, so I helped them with that expansion. That gave me a different perspective on the power side of things. So got them through a big utility provider, big part of our base. And then a really kind of exotic project to a degree. The town had a private prison that got closed down, we had a new owner wanting to reopen. And the quickest way to get prisoners into the facility was for the city to contract with the state for the prisoners. And then we contracted with the actual entity as a subcontractor, essentially. So odd arrangement, but our name was actually on the chain in there and everything. And then a strange element to that, we were ultimately responsible for the prison. So we actually had my police chief go out there once a month, review their operations, discipline issues. It seemed a little bit odd since we weren't experts in running prisons, but it all worked okay. But ended up get a facility that was declining in tax value very rapidly, got it back up on the books. I think around 120 jobs at the facility too.
Wow, great, great. In your view, and by example from your work, what are some of the key efforts local governments can make to help retain local businesses?
Yeah, I think that's a good look at things. I think sometimes I thought for years that folks focus too much on recruiting companies, kind of smokestack chasing, trying to hit the home run. I think you're much better off supporting your local businesses. And at a first level is kind of retention and expansion. That's existing businesses, how are they doing? Do they need a little bit of help to expand? Is there something that could assist with that? There's sad stories out there of, significant businesses in a town that announced they're leaving. And then the city goes and checks and says, what happened? And they said, well, we ran out of space here, or there's not enough utility capacity. And sometimes there are things that could have been corrected, but no one had talked to the business. And so it's getting out there, talking to folks. At that level, I think in the smaller business realm, my experience with Chamber of Commerce, Business Association is really valuable. I know what it's like in the trenches to run businesses. I actually know a lot about running small businesses just by talking to small business owners and learning from what they go through. And I've got some interesting models out there, kind of walking through cooperation, working at a better level with your chamber, setting up folks, to partner. I had a good example. One day I was at the hardware store, and a new business came in to get something, and the hardware owner said, hey, how's it going? And he said, not bad. He said, some of these state forms are driving me nuts. I don't know how to fill them out. And the hardware owner said, come by at 5 and I'll fill it out for you. Because he even knew how to do it. He's been doing it for years. But connecting folks like that, I think supporting your businesses. I've always been real good at integrating the city with the local businesses to find ways to back each other up. Good example there too is when you have new businesses, which that's a huge effort. That takes a lot of guts and gumption for someone to set up a small business. And with the money that goes into it, the planning, that first level that's tough is getting your name out there. People are habit-based. If you have the Mexican restaurant you go to, that's the one you go to. You might not try, the new one. So what we started doing in Monmouth is myself and the city recorder would go out to any new business, interview them, welcome them to the community, and then we would drop them onto our Facebook page, and then we'd also put them in the city newsletter just to help them with that initial, getting the word out. And then since I kind of see myself really integrate into the community, I would flip hats in that discussion, and after we got done with the city stuff, I would pitch the Business Association, the local Chamber of Commerce membership, and get them hooked up with those folks and try to get things going. Similar one with the university in town. There was good resources at the university level to help out businesses, knows how to get them connected. One that was very direct is their art department came up with a new graphic arts program. That goes right into businesses, branding, marketing, materials, logos. So we started unleashing the students on businesses in the community, to refresh, their presence and kind of look things through. And so that's another case of just kind of looking for opportunities and then kind of filling the niche.
Yeah, I love that.
And then at a core level too, at a different level I come to is supporting local businesses is doing a good job at the city. If you're providing good services, the town looks nice, you're direct, your processes are direct, your utility billings clear, you've got options for how to pay that. If you need a building permit, the information is readily available. You can kind of work things through quickly. That's another level of just, in a lot of cases, economic development for a city is just setting the table. If you had a person just, let's just say vacationed in Seward and was like, I could put my business here. If they're experienced there, maybe they had great time with the natural areas, but if they thought thought Seward was just a icky town. Beat up streets, beat up buildings. They'd probably go, I don't think so. This doesn't look right. But if the town's in good shape, that gets them over that first kind of level. And then the next one is be welcoming and helpful when they call for information. That's a big one with a lot of development projects. You drop whatever you're doing and you respond. It's a frustrating process because sometimes they'll clock you to, hey, I need something by 3 o'clock today, and you rush around and get the information for them, and then you might not hear from them for 2 months. But they have their own schedules, and you have to just kind of work with it.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for noting some of those things. Community involvement is very important in Seward. Please explain how you plan to be accessible to the community.
So I think kind of building on previously, I mentioned getting good information out, the newsletter, Facebook, social media, keeping folks hooked up out there. Classic one to deal with pushing out information is age. A lot of folks, of the older variety will say, like the paper newsletter. Younger folks, they want to pull it up on their cell phone or get it in kind of a quicker fashion. So understanding you have some age dynamics out there. People absorb information differently. Then as far as visibility myself, I don't know how to do it otherwise except to be out in the community, let alone chamber board. I've been on nonprofit boards, attending auctions, fundraisers for local groups, Rotary Club. I've been a Rotarian for a number of years. And that's an opportunity to get information out to people, but also to listen. Then people can kind of ask questions. One thing that it's been interesting with my years in the field, it's intriguing with people's behavior that if they might not call you or email you a question, but if they see you on the street, they'll ask the question.
Yeah.
I've also noted that too, having a city president at community events. So like just say it's your 4th of July festival, if the city's there, you just get random questions. And it's really helpful. I've had one city that we set up at the farmer's market on a weekly basis and had different departments out there just to be visible and part of the community. So for me, it's being visible, being out there. There's also some really neat techniques depending on the town of doing, breakfast with the mayor, doing little neighborhood-based meetings. Actually, in Monmouth, actually right before my time, the mayor started calling up people and then say, hey, invite 10 of your friends over for coffee. And then he just show up at somebody's house, talk about a couple of things that the city was working on, and hey, what questions do you have? What ideas do you have? So there's different ways to get out there. There's also some decent online platforms to get out there at different levels. The packages have a cost attached to them, but they have some interesting potential.
Yeah, excellent. What experience do you have in utilizing data and technology to evaluate local government services for their efficiency and effectiveness?
Yeah, I think that's an ongoing process. I think that's built into where you are. It's just the nature of things. But I've never been in an organization that had too much money or too many staff. So being efficient by nature, I run into people every now and then that have that sad situation, but it hasn't really been my experience. So I think you're always just cost conscious. You're always looking where you're going. Lots of basic measures. It's looking at some basic measurements, activity standards. Because right now, if you got your utility billing system, you've got X staff managing that, dividing the utility accounts, customer contacts, kind of looking at that. We hit a stress point in Monmouth a few years back, and it was getting just hard. We'd had growth in the community, and it was getting a little bit hard to get things done. And so, finance director looked into basically just a voicemail system. So if a person was okay, you don't want to never force someone to go through the voice tree and everything. But if they wanted to, that freed up our people at the counter to then help people at the counter or get the backside of the operation taken care of. Now it's just a matter of saying, okay, now we implement that. Is it working? Is it taking the load off, trying to calculate that? Another level is just where you keep up. At a blunter level, maybe our public works department, they got to the point which is always new requirements, new state requirements, new federal. They're behind. They're just getting behind, and so we actually took everything that the department was supposed to be doing, putting it on a one-page chart, and just rated it we're exceeding the standards, meeting, partial, or we're not even touching it, things that we're supposed to. And color coded it, made it easy to look at, and then we used that to present the case to council. But number one, we needed some more bodies, but the other key one was we were going to reorganize and actually need to restructure ourselves differently to do that. And then the simple benchmark at that point was the next time we looked around, we better have the categories shifting more to the, the meeting and exceeding, getting the, activities taken care of. But always looking at just efficiency, where we're going. Every year, the annual budget process, you're going to go through how are we allocating funds, the measures for hitting revenue targets, spending targets, where reserves are. But a lot of it, it's good to monitor where you are, seeing where the activity is. I said the simple ones is, like I said, if you're growing, you can catch, hey, there's a lot of people here. How do we do that? A lot of times, if you have your efficiencies in place, you can absorb, to a degree, but at a certain point, you hit that kind of choke point. A kind of goofy one is a street sweeper. At a certain point, you can get around the whole town, and then at a certain point, you can't anymore. There's just too many streets to take care of, so then that triggers a discussion on whether you need a second sweeper and how to make that work.
Yeah, great, thank you. So what initiatives have you advanced to ensure that the values inherent in diversity, equity, and inclusion are part of the organizational culture where you work?
Yeah, thank you. So I've always operated on the principle that everybody should be taken care of and treated properly. That's just what you're supposed to do. That's just a core value for me. In my organizations, I think things didn't evolve to the point where that was a core practice. I mean, it was taken care of with our customer service, being customer friendly, culturally sensitive on the customer service side. Police department, obviously, understanding different interactions. To a degree, I could go back to Monmouth, had the benefit of having the university in town. So we had a kind of decent, about 15% Latino community, but then the university, we had Arabic students, Chinese students, African, different levels, different cultures, so we had to make adjustments there. So I think those have all been kind of absorbed in, but it never evolved to the point that I did a formal training or program. It was just kind of keeping track of things, making sure that we're taking care of business in that area. Now, with the current environment, yes, that's gotten to be elevated and more of a focus. And I've actually gone through some interesting trainings recently in that area.
Excellent, thank you. How would you establish an environment of trust with the City of Seward's labor unions while still advocating for management?
Yeah, I've always done a good job that I mentioned in my last two organizations, actually. I was part of the negotiating team, and so the way we set that up, I was there, we had the respective department head, and then we had a negotiator that would help us out with the technical aspects. And we've always had good productive relations. It actually has worked really well, good getting through things. But in that case, procedurally, what we do is I go to the council before I start to give me my parameters. Where can I go with pay increases? If you want some adjustments in the health care benefits, any flexibility with kind of the softer, the non-compensated, time off, different areas like that. Then I take that as my marching orders, walk in, start working with the group and kind of getting things done, and then usually at least kind of like a midpoint check-in with the council. Here's where we are. And then by the time the final package gets to the council, it's all what you've already known. It's already there, just kind of where we go to get things done. As I mentioned, always have good relations, always kind of work things through pretty well. Nice one that I worked out with we had one union, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, that also covered public works. And one year, my union rep called me up and said, hey, you guys got any adjustments in other parts of the contract? And I said, no, we're good. He said, neither do we. He said, do you just want to work on compensation? So actually, my negotiator and myself did it over the phone. We just got it done over the phone, got it taken care of. Always has worked well. A nice one that worked pretty well, had some adjustments. We shifted our health care plan off of a traditional plan onto the health reimbursement account, with the VIVA to back that. So high deductible plans, and you backfill them with the HRA or the VIVA. And a little different. I actually set up a work team that was non-rep employees and then members of the 2 unions that we had, and said, hey, let's try to come to an agreement, knowing full well it has to be negotiated, but let's see if we can come to an agreement on where we go with this. And worked through a pretty good process. They brought in some of their own people to give information. Worked really well. It was fascinating. We had it really working, and almost at the end, we had everybody pretty much in agreement. Then the actual union person from the association found out, and then one of them put a kibosh to the process. But we still had a good baseline to start from, so we ended up with some little variations between the work units, but it ended up being pretty consistent, and that worked out pretty nice. One year, just kind of an interesting story, we were negotiating with our police union, and we just sat down with them without paid negotiators, and we had a couple new people on the police side, and they didn't understand the procedures in the system. So at one point, we were having a discussion, and that you could tell they needed to talk to each other. And I just looked at them, I said, you guys do know that you can go do that in private. And they're like, oh, cool, thanks. so I was just coaching them on the process, helping them through how to get things done, and that was great. I think that was like 3 meetings and we were done. So.
Yeah, that's excellent. Good to hear. So what do you need from your supervisors, referring to council, to be effective in your position?
Yeah, I think pretty much the same as anybody. I don't think there's anything exotic about being a city manager in that regard. You want clear direction. You want to be supported. You want to know that if something, there's a concern, it's addressed, it's brought up, and you have an opportunity to look at it, and then given a reasonable chance to be successful. A simple one there is what I do with my employees and what is being reasonable. If I look at a list of council goals and I say I can do 5 this year, and you say no, we want 10, something's not going to happen. Yeah. Something's not going to work right there. You're going to get some frustration. But I think council, particularly, that's an interesting dynamic working as a team. So you are getting clear direction. Most of my career, I've been good in that area. I've had a couple situations where individual counselors were trying to come in and direct staff, and that gets really murky when you go there. So having council work as a group, and as far as me, just that clear direction, trust her on the operation. I'll get you information that you need. You can say a real low-key thank you once in a while. That's fine. I don't need ticker tape parades or anything. So.
Is that when I say, okay, boomer? That goes back to your... Yeah. I liked how you said that before. Yeah. Tell us about a time you handled a situation in which an employee did not perform up to your expectations.
Yeah. So I'll tell you my sad story of life. The first person I hired, I had to let go. And the backdrop was, it was in Colorado. I was the assistant, and I moved up to the administrative position, which meant in that time I was doing both jobs. So that was getting quite taxing, the number of hours I was putting in. I went through a failed recruitment, and then went to my second recruitment, and this is obviously months in now, and went to my first candidate, declined, second candidate, declined. I got to my third, I had concerns. My instinct was saying, you probably shouldn't do this, but I didn't know how long I could go. I didn't know I could go another 3-4 months, trying to do double duty, and it was definitely having impacts on my personal life, let alone professional. So I said, you know what, this guy got really good skills. He was cocky. There was just some attitude issues. And I said, you know what, we're going to get him here. We'll tone him down. He's kind of East Coast, East Coast people, We'll get him toned down, and it'll be fine. And I was wrong. He didn't. Just came out there and immediately was really good at the job functions, but really rubbed people the wrong way. And he just wouldn't adjust. Immediately I was working with him, saying, hey man, this is a low-key, really nice town. You need to take it down a notch. Just take it down. He wouldn't go, and then finally I'm like, wow, he is just not, he's not clicking. He's not taking my direction at all. So it's like, okay, well, we'll start elevating. So I started going into a documentation process. It was a little bit more informal at first. Here, I need this, and then noting I need this corrected. And he continued down the path he was on, and I was still attempting to work with him, and then we actually had a blow-up where he actually had a shouting match with another department head in the lobby of City Hall with citizens present. So I was like, okay, that's too much. So sat him down, said, okay, well, now we're on last chance. We're on last, I developed the agreement from him. Here, last chance employment, here's what's going to happen. In that discussion, he did say that my most favorite thing ever I've heard in local government. He let me know that he had a constitutional right to his personality.
I'm gonna start using that.
I like it.
I didn't know that was there. I said, well, you do, but not necessarily here. And so please, you know, and it was kind of a sad point when he left. He made staff mad, customers, citizens. One that was sad was he was a Little League umpire, and my rec director was concerned whether he was going to make it out of a game in one piece, because he was that bad working with the parents and the kids. When I finally let him go, did my evaluation with the council that year, and kind of a sad note, but one of my main accomplishments was not having him there anymore.
Wow.
Jeez.
The context, but that was interesting. That one happened once, and I've had great hiring decisions ever since, and always had great relations with my department. So it was just that one time, and I'll call it my rookie mistake.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to take my mask down because now's the part of the interview where we get to the very last question, and we ask you, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, well, you actually politely already asked what I need from a city council, and that was very appreciated. As you've probably seen from my background, I've had some mixed experiences with city councils and different things. So having a good, productive group that's willing to work with you would be awesome. And I guess the next one I would throw out would be first 6 months. What are the key projects that I would be working on if I was your manager?
Yeah, that is a great question, and I'll just try to answer on behalf of council. So the elected mayor position is just one of 7, so, I lead the meetings and I'm the point person, but, so if anyone wants to correct me, I think coming on board right now, the key is the mid-session budget, and our current administration's working on that. So, depending on timing with the hire, you're going to walk into a budget where we're really trying to make sense of, the loss of revenue and different things. So it's looking at that funding piece. And then most recently, we've adopted a capital improvement plan in our code where we're asking the city manager to do a 6-year lookout on that. So it's really taking a look at our projects, doing some prioritizing, working with the community on, some projects that have kind of stalled, and that's with the backdrop of funding. So, really taking a long view on what we can accomplish versus, funding and different things. I think that's where we're at, just generally. So, yeah.
Those are good projects otherwise. So if you had to pitch me, why would I want to live in Seward?
Oh, why wouldn't you want to live here?
It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful. I mean, even when it's not beautiful, it's beautiful. We're right on the water. We have the mountains. It's a great quality of life, getting outside. Our community is very involved, which I like because it just shows everyone really is invested and has a lot of pride in our community. And I think the future is endless for us. We really have it's not just tourism. We have a vocational school. We have marine facilities that are really taking off, and just the opportunity of really making us a year-round, enhancing our year-round community and economy. So there's just a lot of opportunities that you'd be coming into, and just the folks are just amazing here.
Could I just?
Yep.
I just wanted to add that my mother has lived here for 90.5 years. She was born here, and she's going to be here till the end. So there's something to be said for Seward if my mom's made it that long through all those winters here. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's neat. It's like I said at the front of the interview. God, there'd just be such an amazing opportunity to live in a town like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I just want to take a chance and say thank you so much for not only applying for the position, I mean, someone with your great background, taking time to go through that application process, taking time with us this evening. We're just so appreciative that you've taken the opportunity to apply for the position. We have council members on the phone. We have one council member that's not here, and I think right now, I don't know that we'll be calling a special meeting. We might, but our next council meeting is the 22nd of February, and we'll be making some decisions about moving forward at that time. Just kind of at the latest. We're just going to see how things go after we did 3 interviews this evening. So that's just, you'll be hearing something from us in the next, within the next 2 weeks.
Very good. No, I appreciate it. And then just to summarize, I'm a complete package. I mean, if you look at my background, I can do anything you throw at me. I've done it multiple times before, and I'd love to be there.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thanks again for your time this evening. We'll give you a little wave out. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
We're done.
Adjourn?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Well, let's adjourn.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.